seriously ill, he has been diagnosed with cancer. Staggering losses. The Russians in the Kursk region have lost 63,000 soldiers. Russia is preparing to attack Finland and is already building up military infrastructure on the border. In Russia, they want to ban Harry Potter and the TV series Game of Thrones because of child-free propaganda. Pro-Russian candidates are losing in the elections in Romania and Poland. Russia tried to launch a Yars nuclear missile at Ukraine, but the launch was unsuccessful. Revolution in Hungary. Thousands of protesters have taken to the streets against Viktor Orbán's policies. Hello, my name is Katerina Pakalchuk, and before we begin, please subscribe to our channel and like this video if we've caught your interest. Things are about to get heated. Russia has lost over 63,000 soldiers during the Ukrainian Armed Forces operation in the Kursk region. This was reported by the General Staff.
The statistics on the enemy's total losses in the area of responsibility of the Kursk group speak for themselves. Since August 6, 2024, the enemy has lost 63,172 military personnel killed and wounded here, including about 4,000 citizens of the DPRK.
Meanwhile, in the Pokrovsk direction, the armed forces of Ukraine, together with civilians, are setting up a new line of defense. The command of the support forces of the armed forces of Ukraine has published a video showing how the tactical group Fort is constructing a line of fortifications. The line consists of 3 anti-tank ditches, dragon's teeth, and barbed wire. At the same time, the footage shows that the dragon's teeth are fastened together with a metal cable and modern barbed wire. The anti-tank ditches also have their own traps, making it impossible for the enemy to move through them. But that's not all. The Security Service of Ukraine, using surface and aerial drones, destroyed an enemy radar station and warehouses on gas production platforms in the Black Sea. The video of this unique special operation is already going viral online. It is claimed that the Security Service of Ukraine used 2 types of drones. First, one of the platforms was struck by an aerial drone, and then a maritime drone hit it as well. As a result of the attack, a Neva radar station, which the enemy uses to monitor air and surface conditions, was destroyed, along with storage facilities and a residential block on the platform. But there is also some unpleasant news. The Russian FPV drones are now reaching the Kramatorsk-Dobropilya highway in Donetsk region. This was reported by military journalist Andriy Tsaplienko. The distance from the Russian positions is more than 40 kilometers, and moreover, he claims that the first cases of strikes on civilian vehicles have already been recorded. Tsaplienko writes that there are several assumptions about which specific drones the Russians are using to reach these targets.
A mother drone that hovers in standby mode at an altitude unreachable by manpads or other air defense systems and launches FPV drones via fiber optic cable. An improved version of the so-called winged FPV drones of the Molnia type, which are resistant to electronic warfare. This could also be the new Russian drone, Tyuvik. It is reportedly equipped with an advanced homing system for the final segment of its flight path and has improved resistance to electronic warfare. Its flight range is more than 30 kilometers.
Things are also very difficult in the Sumy direction. There are constant assaults and cab strikes on the border area. The regional military administration reports that as many as 200 settlements in the Sumy region are now subject to evacuation. Former U.S. President Joe Biden has been diagnosed with an aggressive form of prostate cancer. The New York Times reports this, citing the press secretary of the former American leader. The publication claims that the diagnosis was made after doctors discovered a small nodule that required further evaluation.
Although this is a more aggressive form of the disease, the cancer is likely hormone sensitive, which allows for effective treatment. The president and his family are considering treatment options together with their doctors.
For his part, U.S. President Donald Trump wished Biden a speedy recovery.
Melania and I were saddened to hear about Joe Biden's recent diagnosis. We send our warmest and best wishes to Jill and her family, and wish Joe a swift and successful recovery.
Meanwhile, Putin continues to prepare for war with NATO. Russia is ramping up its military infrastructure near the border with Finland, building bases and new facilities. This is reported by the New York Times. These actions may indicate the Kremlin's strategy after the war against Ukraine ends. Photographs confirmed by NATO representatives show rows of new Russian tents, storage facilities for military equipment, upgraded shelters for fighter jets, and active construction at a helicopter base. However, at present, Russia maintains a limited number of troops in this direction, and for now, this does not pose a significant threat. Do you believe that Putin will actually dare to go to war with NATO? Share your thoughts in the comments.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Soviet-era Nu Pogodi was found to contain LGBT propaganda, while Western films are now being accused of promoting child-free propaganda. The Kremlin continues its efforts to preserve traditional values in Russia. In other words, they are trying to encourage Russians to produce cannon fodder for new wars.
But we must do everything within our power to ensure that, in the future, the birth rate in our country begins to grow steadily.
The Kremlin cannot legally force women to give birth. Neither financial incentives nor church propaganda are working. So now they're turning to cinema made by the decadent West. In Russia, they are planning to ban films about Harry Potter, the series Game of Thrones, as well as Sex and the City.
The register of prohibited information will include content that encourages refusing to have children or justifies such refusal, that creates a positive attitude toward it, informs about the advantages of refusing to have children over giving birth, or forms distorted ideas about their social equivalence, depicts a negative image of pregnancy, motherhood, or fatherhood, or creates a positive attitude toward childlessness, which could motivate people to refuse to have children.
According to Roskomnadzor's criteria, the mentioned films and TV series are banned because of strong female characters who have consciously chosen not to become mothers. In Game of Thrones, this is Brienne, who refused to have children for the sake of her career as a knight. In the Harry Potter films, it's Professor McGonagall, and in the series Sex and the City, it's Samantha. But it seems to me that this list is much longer, especially considering the number of modern films and series where a woman puts herself first. This Sunday, 2 countries at once were electing a new president. And fortunately for us, for the next 4 or 5 years, Poland and Romania will be led by pro-European candidates. However, things are not so clear-cut with Poland yet, but let's take it step by step. In Romania, the presidential election was won by Nicu Șordan. He is not only a pro-European politician, but also supports Ukraine.
Europe and the world had 80 years of peace, and now we have Russia, a state aggressor that has invaded Ukraine. We are part of international treaties, and since this movement could lead to territorial claims that would bring us back to war, which obviously no one wants, we must help the state. That is part of the world order that has brought prosperity.
53.6% of Romanians voted for Dan, and the victory of the inconvenient candidate understandably outraged the Kremlin. Because this is already the second pro-Russian candidate to be left out of power.
Romania has voted. The elections in Romania were, at the very least, strange. We know the story of the candidate who had the best chances and who, let's say, without bothering to look for any justification, was simply forcibly removed from the race.
But no matter how much money Russia poured into its pawns, the people of Romania chose their European future. And this year's presidential election saw a record turnout.
Victory! Victor, 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 Victor! Victor, Victor!
But the Poles will have to vote once again. On June 1st, Poland will hold the second round of the presidential election, since none of the candidates received 50% of the votes. Voters will choose between the liberal Rafał Trzaskowski and the right-wing Karol Nawrocki. From Ukraine's perspective, Trzaskowski is the better option.
The Polish presidential candidate is demanding guarantees for Ukraine's accession to NATO.
Because Nawrocki holds an anti-Ukrainian stance.
The Polish presidential candidate does not see Ukraine in the EU or NATO without accountability for the Volyn tragedy.
By the way, the mention of the Volyn tragedy is obvious, and if Nawrocki wins, it will keep coming up, because Mr. Karol is the head of the Polish Institute of National Remembrance. But no matter how you look at it, it's up to the Poles to choose, and even local sociologists are afraid to predict who the population will cast their coveted vote for.
Right-wing and ultra-right candidates together received more than 50% of the votes in the first round, and among the rest, far from everyone is ready to unconditionally support the mayor of Warsaw in the final round of the election. In addition, sociologists are noting an unusually low turnout in the first round, among voters over 60 years old, which is atypical for Poland. And this theoretically opens up additional reserves of votes for Karol Nawrocki, who enjoys the support of precisely this age group of the electorate. However, it is impossible to say that the outcome of the election has been decided in advance.
So, we are not jumping to conclusions and are waiting for the second round of the election. In the 4th year of the war, much to the Kremlin's regret, Ukraine continues to receive support. And this financial and military support remains at a high level. For example, Belgium and Denmark have announced new aid packages of 1 billion and 563 million euros, respectively. The funds will go toward ammunition, equipment for combat aircraft, and expanding the training base. In addition, the military aid will include Cerberus air defense systems and unmanned naval boats. Australia continues to fulfill its promises and has begun the previously announced shipment of Abrams tanks despite the dissatisfaction of the United States. The White House authorized the transfer of 49 tanks. But behind closed doors, Australia's decision was met without much enthusiasm. Finland, meanwhile, is not only providing military aid, but also making important political decisions, as the country's government plans to purchase ammunition for Ukraine worth 90 million euros, using Russian money. The new aid package will be financed from the profits of frozen Russian assets. Hungary is following so closely in Russia's footsteps that the country is protesting.
We oppose Russian aggression, ongoing for a year and a half.
Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán is pushing a new legislative initiative aimed at restricting, and I quote, foreign funding of civil society and the media. The official reason is to eliminate the threat to Hungary's sovereignty.
We oppose Russian aggression, which has lasted a year and a half.
More than 100 Hungarian organizations and media outlets have criticized the government's proposals as reminiscent of the Russian law on foreign agents and aimed at destroying the remnants of democracy in Hungary. The Hungarian government in turn does not hide the fact that it links its initiative to Ukraine and to countering so-called Ukrainian propaganda.
A similar law was adopted in Russia a few years ago, and since then all independent Russian media have been labeled as foreign agents. We've long said that Orbán has been bitten by Putin, but now, in addition to his anti-Ukrainian rhetoric, he's decided to make life difficult for his own people as well. A trade truce was signed, but China and the US have not stopped competing. It seems that China is challenging the US's air superiority. As early as June, Beijing plans to launch its first drone carrier, the Juqian. This unmanned vehicle, or rather unmanned aircraft, is capable of carrying over 100 armed FPV drones, which are then used for swarm attacks. All of this is coordinated by artificial intelligence. The mother drone itself has a wingspan of 25 meters. It can fly at an altitude of up to 15,000 meters, for a distance of 7,000 kilometers. Ukrainian intelligence has warned about Russia's intention to carry out a demonstration launch of the intercontinental ballistic missile Yars.
A tactic of intimidation. Russia is planning a training and combat launch of an intercontinental ballistic missile. The missile launch, equipped with a training warhead from a mobile ground-based system at a test range, has been ordered to be carried out by the crew of the 433rd Regiment of the 42nd Division of the 31st Army of the Strategic Missile Forces of the aggressor state. The range of this three-stage solid-fuel missile exceeds 10,000 kilometers.
The military analytical portal Defense Express writes that although such launches have taken place in the past, this time the Russians chose a very strange location for the launch. Experts have noted that the Russians plan to launch the missiles from a location near the settlement of Svobodny in the Sverdlovsk region, which is about 1,600 to 1,700 kilometers from the borders of Ukraine.
This is quite an unusual area for such launches because they are usually carried out from the Plesetsk Cosmodrome, both from silo-based and mobile launch platforms.
The Intelligence Directorate wrote that the Russians planned to carry out the launch on the night of May 19, 2025. But it seems that something went wrong. Either the launch was simply postponed because the Intelligence Directorate announced it, or the launch failed due to technical malfunctions, as often happens in Russia. And what do you think the Russians actually intended to do? Leave your comments. This is truly rock bottom. Migrants from Russia and Germany have opened a café called Russia, for everyone who misses their family but has no plans to return.
By popular demand, I came to the Russia Café in Charlottenburg.
The best beer in Berlin.
Opa, Opa, America, Europe.
To Russia.
The man filming the video shows footage of what's happening near the café. Well, as we can see, you can both get drunk and get into a fight there. Oh, and there's also a homeless encampment nearby. Basically, everything is in the Russian style, just like back home.
Here. The police have arrived. It's tough for me. Amigo. Amigo. But there's really nothing funny about this. Under the bridge next to the Russia Café, it's complete chaos.
Well, personally, I'm not surprised. I wonder how many of these sad souls will keep going to that dump of a cafe. What do you think? Write your thoughts. That's all for now. Give this video a like and subscribe so you don't miss the next episodes. And then we'll definitely see each other again.